So we're specifically ignorant of impermanence and interdependence. So impermanence, this is an easy word. It means things don't last. But we keep trying to grab on and hold on to them and make them last. People, I see this all the time. Young people, I know from my own life, and so I see it in others, that young people don't understand old age, sickness, and death. They don't, for the most part, they don't understand it. There are some who do because they've experienced it directly. But, I used to be able to run and, I'd breathe heavy, but I would be fine. And now, I go on a walk for an hour at night and I come back and I'm sweating and I'm like, I notice when I'm chanting here, it's easy chanting with the other monks because I can stop and take a breath whenever I need to. But when I'm leading the chanting, I find that I get out of breath, right? I'm starting to notice my 40 years. I told you a while ago that I have more and more days now when I wake up in the morning and it takes me a minute to get up out of bed and stand up straight. My back is a little stiff and I have to stretch a little bit. That didn't happen when I was 18. So, but the problem is that we want to hang on to this youth. We want to hang on to the good situations and the good things that we have. How would you respond if your house burned down? Think about all your stuff. How would any of us respond? Some people say that we don't possess our things, we don't own our things own us. That's attachment. So we have nice things, we have a nice situation, we're young and we're healthy, we want to hold on to it. But the fact is, everything is impermanent. Every compounded thing. The Buddha said everything comes together. This leads into the next one, interdependence. Everything comes together because of various causes and conditions. And so everything that is made up of parts, everything that arises, that has a beginning, has an end. Okay, that's impermanence. And then interdependence is everything comes together, it's made up of parts, and it comes together because of various causes and conditions. Now, so I am here because my parents met and got married and had kids. And my parents exist because their parents met, got married, and had kids, and on and on and on. And then if we go back far enough in time, we see the beginning of humanity. And before that, there were no humans, but there was some other kind of life form, something like, something similar to an ape. I'm not an anthropologist or whatever, but you know what I mean, right? You learn this stuff in school. So there was something before that that ultimately gave rise to humans. And we go back and back and back until we get to the first life. But that life arose because there was a planet. And the planet came together for reasons I can't explain. Right? So we can go back and back and back. The trees outside. One of these trees outside exists because there was a seed, and there was soil, and there was sunlight and rain and so on. So all of these causes and conditions come together to create something. And each cause, each result itself becomes a new cause. So these trees outside are not just the result of all these causes and conditions, but they will produce seeds. They are then the cause of a new tree, right? This is related to our karma, by the way. We'll talk about this more later in the program. But karma is also related to this interdependence. So things happen to us, right? That's the reason we call that the result of our previous karma. But then that result that we experience is also the cause for our response. And then my response isn't just the result, it's also a cause for new karma. And it goes on and on and on and on, okay? So intellectually, when we talk about this in a basic way, it's pretty easy to understand, right? But when we're living our daily lives, because over countless lifetimes we've come to this wrong belief that things are permanent and we can hold on to them, and that our actions really don't have results, we continue to think and behave in ways that cause suffering. So I say that I understand karma, but I know that I make stupid mistakes all the time. And so I create more negative karma for myself. So intellectually I get it, but my actions show that I still, maybe subconsciously, I'm acting as though my actions don't have results, that interdependence isn't real. Do you understand? Okay. So that's the origin of suffering. And then this ignorance shows itself then through the attachment and aversion that I talked about before. Because we're ignorant of things being impermanent, we're constantly grabbing at and holding on, trying to hold on to ways to stay happy. Or aversion, we're trying to run away from what we don't like, but in an ignorant way. So then we come to this next one, the end of suffering. So anyone can overcome this ignorance. This is what the Buddha taught. Anyone can overcome this ignorance. This is called nirodha. We usually translate that as cessation, which is just another way of saying end, right? So the truth of suffering, the origin of suffering, and now the end of suffering. So we end suffering when we overcome ignorance and the resulting attachment and aversion. So the way to end suffering isn't by finding the perfect situation out there in the world, the perfect husband or wife, the perfect job, right? That's not the way to end suffering. The way to end suffering is to overcome our ignorance, to really completely know impermanence and interdependence, the law of karma, to really get it, not just with our heads but with our hearts, and to completely change then how we view and interact with the world. This is how we overcome our suffering. So here we talk about the renunciation of samsara. So samsara is this state of being ignorant, right? Usually we translate it as the world of suffering, but samsara doesn't really mean the physical world out there. It's talking about our own minds. So it's this, samsara is really talking about really refers to the state of being ignorant, of being unenlightened. And then our unenlightened thoughts and words and actions. Okay, that's samsara. So renunciation means to turn away from that. But this is different than ignorant aversion. Ignorant aversion is, like I said, oh, here comes that person I don't want to talk to, I'm going to go hide. Right? That's the kind of ignorant aversion. But renunciation of samsara means to turn away from our ignorance. It means to say, okay, I understand impermanence, so I'm going to turn away from all of my grasping and trying to hold on to things. I understand that I am ignorant, and so I'm going to turn away from my selfishness and stop running away from this person that I don't like. They are also an ignorant, suffering, sentient being, and they need compassion, not me gossiping about them behind their back with my coworkers or friends. Okay? This is what we're turning away from. So we're turning away from our ignorance itself. That's what to renounce means, to say no, right? So we're saying no to ignorance. Mm-hmm. This is the reason why people become monks and nuns. I didn't become a monk because I'm so wise. I didn't become a monk because I'm already enlightened. I became a monk because I recognized, even as a boy to a certain extent, I recognized that I really am ignorant. And I can see the value of a monastic life, of these vows, in helping me to cross the waters of ignorance into enlightenment. Someone today, I was at a temple in Anaheim, And I met a woman who was shocked when she found out that I was celibate. This other temple, they have this order, they have both celibate monks and nuns, and they have married clergy, sort of like Protestant ministers and things. So she was kind of surprised to learn that I had a vow of celibacy and I don't drink alcohol and all of that. She seemed to think that I was giving up something that is a real source of happiness, right? I run into this a lot. People think that the vows are like bars on a prison cage that are holding me back from having happiness. That's not what the vows are about. The vows are like lanterns. They're lights on the path. And so when I start to go off the path, that's when I run into one of these lights, right? That's when I see, oh, I'm getting off the path. And so the vows help me stay on the path. This is what the vows are about. So the vows are really a source of freedom. I haven't given up anything that's of any real value. That is real source of ultimate, lasting happiness. So this is what the monastic vows are about. But even as lay people, I'm not saying that everyone should be a monk or nun. Not everyone's suited for that. I think the quickest way to enlightenment is the way to which each of us individually is best suited. And for some people, that's as a monk or nun. Some people, the best way for them to pursue the Dharma is living a lay life. That's fine. So even as lay people, you can renounce samsara in other ways by letting go of material attachments, more material attachments. Quit collecting so much stuff. I just said a minute ago, your stuff owns you. You don't own your stuff. Right? So there are other ways that you can work with this teaching that are just as valid, just as good, and you can make progress in this life to overcoming this ignorance and moving towards enlightenment. And of course, just because someone becomes a monk or nun doesn't guarantee that they're going to get there any faster than you, to enlightenment any faster than you necessarily. I've met monastics who are attached to their status of being a monk or nun. So, there are all different kinds of attachment. So just don't think, being a monk or a nun is a good thing, but don't think that you can't pursue the Dharma as a layperson. You can, okay? So then that brings us to the last of the Four Noble Truths, which is the path to the end of suffering. So this is really the Eightfold Noble Path. And I'm going to talk about this next week. Let me see. I've been talking for a while now. I'm going to talk about this next week. But basically, this is now the method that the Buddha taught for overcoming our ignorance. And it's broken down into wisdom, morality, and meditation. So wisdom, for the most part, we cultivate through study. Okay. Of course, acting in a moral and ethical way supports our cultivation of wisdom, just as studying the Buddha's teachings supports our ability and our desire to act in a moral and ethical way, right? They both support one another. And then in meditation, as you heard me talk about last week, we start to see the mind, what the mind is doing, and where we are thinking in accordance with the Buddha's teachings and where we're heading off in the wrong direction. So this is how meditation supports wisdom and morality. But I will talk about this more next week. So essentially, this last one is the Noble Eightfold Path. Now this isn't just all of this. The Four Noble Truths are not just a philosophical statement. This is a tool that we use to look at our own thoughts and words and actions. So these Four Noble Truths, it's like a lens that we use to focus on our thoughts and words and actions. And then we can see where we are making decisions that are leading us towards suffering and where we are making better decisions that lead us away from suffering. So this isn't just a list to know. It's a tool to use in our practice. Okay? So I'm going to stop here with the Four Noble Truths. And I'd like to see if anyone has any questions or thoughts. Not just about this, but about anything you might have been thinking about in the Dharma.